Good morning. Exciting day today. So the car's all ready to go for Donington. Obviously bonnet on and stuff. Pedal box cover needs to go on. But Donington, it's Wednesday today. Donington's on Friday. But the driver's seat's still not in. And that's because there is a chap called Andrew coming shortly, who is going to fit me my racing seat. So it's a resin bean bag type thing. It'll involve, well, I don't know what it'll involve. I think I can guess, but I'll find out soon enough. But I think it'll involve sticking some sort of bag of beans in the car. I sit in it, get comfortable. He adjusts various things, and then I guess it's some kind of vacuum resin setup, and then sit there until it cures. So yeah, that's the job for today. Quite excited about this one because I'm not that comfortable in these tillets. And I'm a little bit too tall for the roll cage, so this should hopefully get me down lower in the car and a bit more comfortable on track. So yeah, this is good timing really, because I get to test this out for Donny. It's kind of like a two-phase install. One involves Andrew coming here and getting the actual shape of the seat right, and then what he usually recommends is that you go off and get some mileage on the car just to make sure it's all okay, see if a few bits need adjusting or trimming or whatever. And once you're happy with it, Andrew takes the seat back, and then there's loads of trimming options. You can leave it untrimmed if you want, but there's some nice trimming options to make it look nice. So this is obviously just phase one for now, and we'll come around and finish the job before the racing season starts. So here we are, time lapse time. I did discuss this with Andrew before we started. He was happy for me to do this. So yeah, hopefully I do his work justice. I didn't get off to a great start with the camera positioning, because where you can see me stood against the wall chatting there, Andrew came in and kind of set up his own little workstation. He had great big flight cases, fold out tables, he was fully self-sufficient, and he set up a bit of a workshop over just out of shot. So you'll miss that, unfortunately. I'll try to recall from memory and talk you through what it was he was doing. But effectively, he was preparing all of his materials, talking me through what we'd be doing for the day, and started off just with a bit of housekeeping in the car, taping the seat belts out of the way, and making sure things were routed and positioned in the right place. And I started getting my race gear, or what race gear I do have so far, ready. The recommendation is you would sit there in your proper race suit, your boots, your gloves, your helmet, your hands, everything. I don't have a lot of that stuff yet. It's ordered, but just isn't with us yet. So I've got my helmet in my hands, which is the most important thing. So that's what I would be kind of mocking up with, and just trying to find the heights and the positions for that. So as you can see, I've just put my helmet on now. Kind of talking through what it is we're going to be doing. Step one, Andrew's literally just going to have me sit on the floor pan of the car, so he can take some measurements, figure out where the top of my head is, where my shins are, where my feet end up. Because the height adjustment you get really is shuffling the driver's bum backwards or forwards. If I shuffle my bum towards the pedals, it will make my seating position more reclined, my head will become lower, but it means my legs will then start bending up into the footwell. So it's just finding that balance of how upright you want to sit to get that position right. So what Andrew's got here, he's got the bag of beads. It kind of came in a big, almost like two sheets stuck together, a big flat rectangular kind of thing. And he spent some time out of shot flattening it all out and making sure the beads were distributed nicely. What we're doing now is we're putting the headrest on the roll cage. That Caterham do supply that with the kit, and a small piece of foam will go on there just to give my head some support once the seat's in. And as you can see now, just getting in there and kind of trying to shuffle the beads around and figure out roughly what works. We're not worried about any kind of final positions yet, but Andrew's got some string there where he's measuring the distance between the top of the cage and the top of my head to make sure that we meet the regulations. While there's no vacuum on the bead bag, the beads are very easy to move around. It's almost like a stiff fluid, like a thick fluid, so we can kind of move things around. But you'll see Andrew just keeps attaching a little vacuum pump onto that nozzle above the rear wing. And as he does that, it's incredible. It just stiffens the whole thing up. As the air comes out, it becomes a solid. So we can kind of move things around, make it solid, and then put air back in again to make it fluid again to move some other bits around. So that was quite a fascinating process. It was pretty cold in the garage, so Andrew's got just out of shot by my workbench a little fan heater, just warming up the resins and various other things, just to make it more easier to work with, I guess. So just off shot now, what Andrew's doing is starting to introduce the resin. This is like a two-part resin into the beanbag and kind of massaging it around, making sure it's equally distributed throughout all of the beads. I think I ran off and grabbed us both a brew around this time. And it was maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes of Andrew preparing everything for the kind of the final fit. And this was where you start to see a lot of this kind of skill comes in and experience. Like, you can DIY this, people do, and I'm sure some people do a great job of it. But just seeing the things that Andrew's obviously developed, the techniques he's developed over years and hundreds of seats, yeah, it made me glad, to be honest, that I didn't have a go. I think I would have wasted a lot of materials and probably got myself stuck to part of the garage or car at some point. The resin's pretty potent stuff. But the next step really was to once the resin was all in, we were then against the clock, right? We had to get the bag back in the car, get me into it, and start to make those adjustments that would become final. Again, using the same technique of adding and removing air to increase and decrease the stiffness on demand of the beads and their position. So here we go. I'm getting in, get the steering wheel on just so I can keep checking my posture and position and what have you. Making sure those measurements are final with the helmet clearance needed, and then starting to add and move the beads around. Right, this is again where Andrew's skill comes in. Is moving the beads into the appropriate places to give me support in all the right areas. So predominantly around the rib cage, between the legs, the lower back, whilst also, giving me freedom of movement around my shoulders. It was clearly a balancing act. It's a very tight cockpit, very, very, very tight. You don't get much room, particularly on the sort of left-hand shoulder, which is, encroached upon by the center console and stuff. And once we kind of got the position right, it was a case of taking the air out and then sitting there for a while. As you can see, just chatting shit really, talking all things motorsport, all things beanbags. But I wasn't in there for that long. The resin cured to the point where I could kind of get out of the seat without ruining it, probably in sort of 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour at a push. I wasn't timing it exactly, but it wasn't that long. But that wasn't quite at full hardness at that point. So this was us just letting it come up to that initial point of hardness where I could freely get out of the car and go about my business. So where I've ended up in the seating position compared to the Tillet is I am in a slightly more reclined position. So my hips are kind of thrust forward towards the pedal box a little bit, which means I do have a bend in my knees now. We removed the little rubber pedal caps that come on the brake and the clutch pedal. We took those off just to buy me a valuable couple of millimeters. But as I found in the subsequent track day, my leg position was actually pretty good. That wasn't a concern at all. As you can see now, I've jumped out. Oh, I said jumped out. The time lapse didn't do it any justice. I thought he was going to have to get the bread knife out and cut me out at one point. It was very cosy, but eventually worked my way out. Now at this point, Andrew's filled the car with electric blankets, a couple of fan heaters, trying to get as much heat into there as possible, so that it cures evenly and effectively. Again, another sort of trick of the trade you probably wouldn't have picked up. Probably should edit that bit out. Maybe some secret stuff going on Andrew's phone. But go out and make another brew, and it's a waiting game at this point, just to get the seat to a level of hardness, which will allow Andrew to start hacking away at it to trim off the excess and get it into a usable state. Okay, so I fast forwarded a bit. There's a lot of standing around, drinking, and showing each other pictures of stuff on phones. So it's cured to an acceptable level now. So Andrew can start trimming off the excess. Again, using his experience here to make sure not only is it functional, but it also looks right. At this point, it's just a massive blob of Kyle-shaped polystyrene. That's kind of what it looks like. But making this thing, look attractive, particularly after it's been trimmed, is a whole of a part of this. So yeah, trimming off the excess that we know isn't adding anything to with support, but also makes it realistic for ingress and egress. If I'd have sat in it at that point, maybe I would have got in. I probably wouldn't have come out again, not without a crane or a winch or something. So yeah, just making the seat livable, really. So again, quick fast forward, you can see the somewhat trimmed seat is now back. You see there's some tape on the underside of the seat as well. What that is because I'm on the taller side. The base of the seat is basically transparent, right? There's like one bead thickness right at the base. You can see through the floor. So to make that a little bit more comfortable, he bonds on a high density foam pad, which also has the cutout. It acts as a cutout template for the crotch straps as well. So I'm not actually sat on the floor of the car. I am sat on kind of a foam pad. Um, yeah, doing the kind of final fit now. Make sure we're all set. A note on the belts. How the belts come out of the car on the kit for the tillet seats is they bolt onto the top of a chassis rail on top of the boot. The back of this seat sits lower than that, and the harness strap should either be exactly horizontal or up to 20 degrees upward inclined. As they are at the minute, they're in a downwards incline, so they're not appropriate. So the supported fix for that it's in the Caterham regulations is to actually cut some letterboxes in the boot bulkhead. So then what you do is you attach the seatbelt, the shoulder straps to the underside of that chassis rail, which lowers the kind of position by about an inch. But that does the job, and it will make it so that the belts are now angled slightly upwards over on the hands device, so that in the event of an impact, the force of the belt is kind of holding the hands down as well. It's not just kind of holding it against my chest. So we're wrapping up now. So Andrew's tidying his stuff up. The seat's not quite at its full hardness, particularly the bits that have been glued onto it, like underneath and stuff. So it'll sit there for a few hours, and I'll come back into the garage, later on to kind of fit it in the car. The seat, with me being on the slightly larger side in certain aspects, the seat is very thin. So one of the things that might happen when it gets trimmed is Andrew talked about there being some kind of Kevlar reinforcement sheets maybe that would get bonded onto the side of it. I've done it at the time of recording this. I've done a track day in it. It's fantastic. It holds me really well. I'll probably do a full assessment of it in a separate video. But yeah, that's a wrap really. I've got a couple of photos that I'll put up on screen just to show the end result, but also what a trimmed version is, because Andrew was dropping off a trimmed completed item. So I'll put a photo up just so you can see what the end result looks like. So yeah, that's it. Concludes this video. Next one should be the Donington Park track day update. Enjoy. So there we go then. The final-ish product. As I said right at the start, this is kind of phase one. It's going to get trimmed afterwards. I'm going to do a track day in it like this and just check to make sure there's no niggles, no pressure points, no whatever. Yes, I'll put this in the car tonight, do the final adjustments on my belts after what we'd been discussing during the time lapse. But yeah, really enjoyed that. Andrew's fantastic, really interesting guy. As most people, I find most people who are around motorsport regularly, tend to find them interesting. Some great stories, some great experience as well. And you just made the whole thing enjoyable. Really excited to drive the car with that seat in now. I'm sat much lower. I'm a lot more supported, particularly around the legs, particularly around the sort of thighs here. There's just a heck of a lot more support than I've ever had in a car. So yeah, dead happy with that. So I'm gonna get the seat in, get the belts, find the final tweaks on the belts, get the seat in, get the bonnet on, and tonight I'm gonna put this car in the trailer because I've got a long day tomorrow. I'm down to Oxford and back tomorrow, so it'll be late night and then straight to bed, and then Donington on Friday morning. So I basically need to get the car ready for the track day tonight. So I better crack on.